Hello, my name's Kerry and welcome back to the Unsolved podcast. As always, before we get going with this week's episode, I'm here to remind you that this is a true crime podcast and not suitable for all audiences. This podcast is aimed at adult audiences only and listener discretion is advised. It began with a phone call late one evening in Widnes, Cheshire. The kind of call you answer half distracted, expecting nothing more than a quick chat or a small favour. On the other end of the line was Vera Anderson. Her voice sounded calm enough, but she needed help, just for a little while. She asked a friend if they could watch her young son. This wasn't a usual request, but friends help each other out all the time. Life gets busy, things come up, and sometimes you just need someone you trust to step in for a few hours. Vera explained that she had something she needed to take care of. It wouldn't take long, 10 minutes in fact, and she'd be back soon. Her friend agreed without hesitation. Her son was dropped off safe and sound with the understanding that his mum would return later that night to pick him up. Everything about the arrangement seemed normal, routine even. But as the hours passed, something began to feel wrong. Night turned into the early hours of the morning, and Vera never came back. At first there were reasonable explanations. Maybe she'd been delayed. Maybe something unexpected had come up. But the silence stretched on, and concerns slowly began to replace those simple assumptions. Because Vera Anderson didn't just miss the pickup time. She disappeared. No messages, no calls, no explanation. A mother who had asked for a small favour and then seemingly vanished from her own life. For the friend left caring for her son, the situation quickly turned from unusual to deeply unsettling. And as the days unfolded, the question hanging over everyone in Widnes became impossible to ignore. What happened to Vera Anderson? It was Saturday the 24th of August 1991 at around 10 p.m. when Veronica Anderson, known as Vera, was at home watching TV. Her 7-year-old son Neil was in bed when the phone rang. Vera answered it. Vera then woke Neil up and walked him to next-door neighbour and close friend Ethel's house and knocked on the door at around 10:10 p.m. Ethel's son Paul answered and Ethel joined him at the door. Vera asked Ethel if she could watch Neil for her as she needed to pick something up for her brother. Ethel hadn't been asked to watch Neil before, but as friends do, she agreed. She noted Vera emptying the boot of her car, and before heading off, Vera told Ethel that she would be just 10 minutes. Vera then drove off in her blue Ford Cortina. It would seem that Vera was in a rush to meet this person, as she'd left her purse at home and the lights and TV on. Also an indication that she'd been planning on returning shortly after leaving. But 10 minutes soon turned into 20, which soon turned into an hour, and before Ethel knew it, it was 3 a.m, and Vera had not been back to collect Neil, nor had she called. Ethel assumed something had come up, and Vera would be back in the morning, so they went to bed. But who was Vera? Well, she was a 42-year-old single mother from Widnes in Cheshire, northwest England. She had 2 children, Lorraine, who was 19 and no longer lived with Vera, and 7-year-old Neil. She had been married twice and was currently in separation with her previous husband. She had a boyfriend who was a trucker that lived in the south of England, but who was planning on moving in with her. Vera was described as an exceptionally good mother, with her 2 children being her main focus in life. She had a little business making sandwiches that she supplied to local offices that she ran with her daughter Lorraine. Vera was described as being fun-loving, without any enemies. At 3 a.m. on the 25th of August 1991, a local 20-year-old man was driving home from being out clubbing and was heading to a house party. He was driving down Tannery Lane. In 1991, it was a dark and quiet industrial estate, filled with derelict buildings and wasteland. He noticed a group of men around a car, and having been the victim of having his wheels stolen from his car a few weeks before, decided to chase them off in his car. That's when he spotted a Blue Ford Cortina. He assumed the group of men had also stolen the wheels from this car, so decided to go and inform the police. He drove to the police station where an officer was sitting in his car. He flashed him over and informed him of what he had just seen in Tannery Lane. He and the policeman drove back to the Cortina and parked behind it, arriving at 3:15 a.m. When the police car pulled in, the headlights lit up the car, and the police officer got out and used a large torch to start searching the area. The combination of the torch and the headlights lit up the car, and that's when the young man saw Vera. To this day, the gentleman struggles to talk about what he saw and says that it's had a lasting effect on him. Vera was in the front seat of her car, slumped over the steering wheel. Her throat had been slashed open. A large chunk of hair had been ripped out. She was fully clothed, and it seemed like she was attacked from behind, as she had injuries to her lower legs consistent with her thrashing them against the footwell of the car. There were no signs of robbery or sexual assault having taken place. 2 items were found nearby, a sash, similar to what you would tie back a curtain with, and a white glove covered in blood. The post-mortem later confirmed that Vera had been strangled prior to having her throat cut, and although the sash has never been proven via DNA to have a link to the case, it has been considered whether it was used for the strangulation. The glove was kept in evidence, and we'll cover this in more detail later on in the episode. The policeman, who was of a similar age to the young man, immediately vomited on seeing the scene. The police have gone on to describe Vera's murder as overkill and consistent with a hitman murder, particularly with the hair being ripped from her scalp, as evidence that the job has been done. The young man who alerted the police to the car, and who has never been named, did state that as they turned the corner to return to the car, he saw someone running off through the dense grassland. He didn't see their face, but he could tell that it was a man. As the news spread of the murder, the local community was stunned and wanted to do all they could to help find the killer. Lorraine was informed of her mother's murder, pregnant at the time with Vera's second grandchild. She then had the excruciating task of identifying her own mother's body, and then even worse, having to break the news to her 7-year-old brother. Something that she has gone on to reflect on over the years. In a Crime Watch Live programme aired in September 2021, Lorraine said,
Vera's daughter, Lorraine, was 19 at the time and still vividly remembers the day she lost her mum.
Got woken up on the Sunday morning by 2 CIDs standing at the door. It was very difficult. I just felt so alone, to be honest. And I thought, what am I going to do? But I just got on with it. No choice. I was more upset about my brother really losing my mum because he was only 7, and he idolised my mother. We had to sit him down and tell him that his mummy was never coming back, and that was the hardest thing.
Police now had to try and establish who had done this to Vera and why. What was the motive? This question alone proved impossible to answer. As police started their investigation, it came to appear that Vera was very well liked, didn't have any enemies, and didn't seem to be involved in any criminal-like activities such as drugs. Vera also wasn't particularly well off. In fact, despite having her own sandwich company, she was known to struggle to make ends meet at times, so the motive being money-related was kind of ruled out. As with all murders of women, They first turned their attention to her ex-husbands and partner, but all had alibis and all seemed exceptionally upset by Vera's murder, particularly her boyfriend who had stayed the Friday night with her, and they'd been discussing him moving in. It was 7-year-old Neil who alerted police to the phone call that she'd received before dropping him off to the next-door neighbour Ethel. But being 1991, police were unable to trace this phone call. To this day, it is still unknown who Vera spoke to on the phone and whether they were the person that she was meeting. But the theory is that this phone call is very much to do with her murder. It was on reflection that Ethel realised the reason for Vera dropping off Neil may have been a lie also, as Vera told her that she was picking something up for her brother, but used the word brother instead of his name, something Vera would never do. So the questions then formed: who was she meeting? And why did she not tell anyone? Ethel concluded that it must have been someone Vera knew, as she was dressed in casual clothing. Vera was known to always dress up, look smart and presentable, unless it was someone she was close to. But she obviously didn't feel too close to them, as she didn't take Neil with her. The police now started to look at other areas of Vera's life. Where did she socialise? Who with? And a place called the Roll-In Truck Stop became of prime focus. This was a bar and motel area that truckers would stop to rest on their long journeys. Vera was known to frequent the Roll-In regularly and appeared to be well received by the regulars and one of truckers that would stop by. In fact, it was here that she'd met her current boyfriend. Vera had told Lorraine that the Roll-In would often attract some odd and strange people, undesirables if you will. The rolling truck stop didn't lead the police anywhere, but another drinking establishment was soon added to the list of inquiries. 2 months into the investigation, a witness came forward with a potential sighting of Vera in the Crown and Cushion pub. The pub is located on Warrington Road in Penketh and is less than a mile away from where Vera's body was found. And this potential sighting seemed to have some legs, as it fits within the timeline. The witness says they saw Vera in the pub with a man at around 10:30 p.m. She ordered a lager, and then her and the man appeared to have a chat. They didn't seem to be intimate or acting like strangers, but they were talking before leaving at around 11 p.m. The witness described the man, and he was described as being a Caucasian man aged between mid-30s to early 40s. He had short, mousy-coloured hair and a neatly trimmed, mousy-coloured moustache. He was of a slim build and had a slim face, with it being described as sunken. He was wearing a fawn-coloured jacket. Police worked with the witness and drew up an artist impression in profile view. We'll come back to him shortly, because it would appear that he may have been identified. I'll also add the artist impression to my Instagram on the day of release of this podcast. The witness said that Vera was wearing a printed t-shirt, a blazer-style jacket, jeans, and a pair of flip-flops. This will become important shortly. Another witness also came forward from the night of the murder. He lived in a house that overlooked the service road that Vera's car had been parked in, and between 10:45 p.m. and 11:15 p.m, he recalled seeing a brown hatchback-style car emerging from the same place and driving erratically, mounting a curb and almost hitting a parked car. The witness wasn't able to recall the type of car it was, but police did release this information and suspected it may have been either a Talbot Horizon, a Datsun Cherry, a Vauxhall Astra, or a Mitsubishi. Police put out appeals to try and locate the driver and the car. At 1:30 a.m, a couple returning from a nearby social club noted Vera's car parked in the location it was eventually found in on their walk home. This led the Home Office pathologist to conclude that Vera was likely killed somewhere between 11:30 p.m. and 2:30 a.m. With the witness statements coming in, although some not immediately, Police believed they would be able to piece together the clues to figure out who it was that had murdered Vera. So let's start to unpick them then. From the artist's impression of the man in the Crown and Cushion pub, one particular name started to be shared. That was John Blythe. Rumours started to circulate that John was having secret meetings with Vera, and there was the possibility of an affair going on. He was a local man from Widnes and didn't have a particularly great reputation. Police called him in for questioning and asked him if he knew Vera Anderson and whether he'd ever spent time at the Roll-In Truck stop. John said no to both. However, on a search at the Roll-In, receipts of credit card transactions were found, with one having John's signature on. This led police to fully suspect that John had something to hide. They spoke with previous partners of John, one of which explained that she had met him in a nightclub. He had asked for her number, but she wasn't entirely sure that she wanted to give it. So instead, she took his number and called him a week later. John asked her if she'd like to go on a date, and she agreed. He suggested that they meet at the Crown and Cushion pub. This small piece of information made the police's ears prick up. About a week after their first date, the woman received a huge bunch of red roses. Confused as to who could have sent them, she asked John if they were from him, to which he told her they were. This confused her, as John did not know where she lived or had her address. When she probed him about this, John told her that he'd seen her and a friend having a drink at a local pub and followed her home. Spooked by the admission, she didn't pursue the relationship much further, describing John as being aloof. But this tale of stalking did keep him as a prime suspect for the police. In fact, his name is still near the top of their list today, even with John having passed away around 2016. The white Minette branded glove that was found at the scene was tested forensically, and the blood was proven to be that of Vera's, confirming that this glove was likely worn by the killer during the murder. I've read multiple reports on Vera's case and watched a documentary, yet none of them seem to confirm whether any DNA other than Vera's were found on the glove. The curtain tie sash, although having no DNA to confirm that it was what was used to strangle Vera, has been kept in evidence, as police strongly believe it is linked. The brown car has never been located, nor has the driver. Friends and family of Vera are not fully believing that the sighting of her in the Crown and Cushion pub is correct. Ethel noted that Vera was in casual clothing when she dropped Neil off, although what she was wearing, according to Ethel, I'm not sure. We know that the witness said Vera was wearing casual clothing, but family say that Vera would never go to a pub in such a casual look, especially wearing flip-flops. She always had great pride in how she looked, and even if she was meeting just a friend for a drink, she always dressed up. Then there's the ordering of a lager. Vera didn't drink lager, instead always opting for a stout or IPA. There's also the consideration that this witness may have been slightly intoxicated themselves, and having seen pictures of Vera in the news, with a hazy memory, thought it was her. Now I know what you're thinking. This can't be the end of the podcast. Don't worry, it's not. Over the years, the police have called upon the public on numerous occasions to come forward with any information they may have. The case is still open and active today, which means that Cheshire Police aren't able to confirm certain aspects of the case. This could be why we don't know if the DNA of the killer is on the glove, for example, or the names of those who have been arrested in connection, apart from John, of course. But there have been developments, interviews, other suspects, and even the release of CCTV. Yep, CCTV. One of the theories that police and others investigating the case believe is that there may have been two people responsible for Vera's death. Going back to the casual clothing, Ethel is almost certain that whoever it was that Vera had planned to meet must be someone she knew due to how she was dressed, and the fact that she was meeting so late at night. So with this in mind, going back to how Vera was found in the car, strongly suggests that she was attacked from behind. Would she have someone sitting behind her in the car if she didn't know them? Particularly if it was just one person? Or did she have someone else sitting in the front of the car, hence why the murderer was sitting behind her? This would almost make sense with regards to what the witness saw around the time. You'll remember me saying the young man who found Vera saw someone running from the scene, and another witness saw the brown car. Maybe if acting as a pair, they left the scene separately. There have been other arrests over the years, although Cheshire Police stay quiet with regards to Vera's case. A Channel 4 documentary series called In the Footstep of Killers covered Vera's case and managed to have it confirmed from an off-the-record police source that the names given to him had been questioned around the time of the murder and were persons of interest. So let's talk about them. Alan Bamber was connected to Vera through the roll-in truck stop. You may recall me saying that Vera had confided to Lorraine that the roll-in attracted some undesirables, and it's fair to say that Alan was most likely one of them. He got himself barred from the roll-in for getting into a fight with the owner's husband. At the end of the fight, he pointed to the owner and told her he would get her next. He was also a regular offender and known to the police for smaller types of crimes such as burglary and obstructing a police officer. He also spent 16 months in prison in 1988 for headbutting one of his victims. He was known for being violent, aggressive and thug-like. The connection appears to strengthen, as through research and friends of Vera's, it's established that she was a bit of a wheeler dealer, selling items of low value for extra money such as towels, deodorants and mattresses. It seems pretty unlikely that selling some low-end goods could be a cause for such a brutal murder, but according to the off-record police source, Bamber had implied that Vera had gotten on the wrong side of some people in relation to these items. People being Bamber. The main reason that no charges could be brought, it would seem, is the lack of evidence. Bamber didn't have a particularly strong alibi for where he was on the night of Vera's murder, having told police that he was at home alone watching TV. Bamber died in 2017, so any secrets he may have with regard to Vera's murder have likely gone to the grave with him. But the plot does thicken when you start to look at who else Bamber was involved in, because an associate of Bamber's, John Davis, is also a person of interest in this case. Bamber and Davis were involved in criminal activity together around the Warrington and Widnes area. And Davis was not a man to be messed with. In 1995 he was convicted of murder. In December 1993, Davis murdered his business associate, John Elledge. Davis and his wife had travelled down from Warrington to Paignton in Devon, where Elledge and his wife lived. When there, Davis took Elledge to his garage, tortured him with a cigarette before stabbing him 33 times. While this was happening, Davis' wife tied up Elledge's wife before the pair headed off with £50,000 worth of cash and jewellery. Fortunately, Mrs. Elledge was able to raise the alarm quite quickly, and the pair of them were caught and arrested as they travelled back to Warrington. Davis pleaded guilty to the charge of murder on Elledge. However, in 2005, Davis took his own life. His wife seemed to enjoy the life that Davis had led, because a few weeks before he took his own life, his wife, Denise Davis, was convicted of another murder. It's unknown whether her conviction was the cause for him to commit suicide, but it does open up a page to be explored. Because if Davis was responsible for Vera's murder, and if there were two of them present as police suspected, could he have carried out this heinous and brutal murder with his wife? It was confirmed by a police source that Davis was considered a suspect in the reinvestigation of Vera's case in 2013. It's currently unconfirmed whether he was a suspect in the original investigation. But it doesn't stop there, because on the In the Footstep of Killers documentary, They speak to someone whose friend had spent time in prison with Davis. Not just time in prison, shared a cell with. This person doesn't appear on the programme and his voice has been changed, but he tells investigators that his friend confided in him that while sharing a cell with Davis, he confessed to Vera's murder, with the reason being over a deal that went wrong and feeling like Vera had done him over for £1,800. In the documentary, they ask whether this friend may be lying. The person recalling the story says, well, what would he gain? Which is a very valid point. The investigators ask whether his friend would speak to them, and the person on the phone says no, because he doesn't want to come across as a grass or have any repercussions for telling. The man also goes on to say that he knew Davis, but tried to avoid him. However, he did know his brother on better terms, and what he then says next is also compelling. Because Davis had access to a brown Vauxhall Astra, owned by his youngest brother. So, is that it? Is it a case of a cell confession finally being told after Davis killed himself that will leave this case open? It all seems pretty legit, and like the person on the phone says, what would the inmate get from lying? He's clearly already worried about being seen as a grass, so why would he make this up? One of the strangest moves in this case, that I can't recall happening on any other case, happened in 2014, when Cheshire Police released CCTV asking the public to identify two people. Now, Vera's murder happened in 1991. Yes, we had CCTV then, but not a lot of it, and the quality wasn't great. And it seems unlikely that a service road surrounded by derelict buildings would have CCTV that the police would be able to access in 2014. Well, that's because the CCTV wasn't from 1991. The CCTV was from the 9th of March 2013 in a Tesco Extra store on Winwick Road in Warrington. In the appeal of the CCTV, Chief Inspector Adam Waller said, I quote, "The smallest detail may help us in bringing justice for Vera and her family. Someone must know what happened that day. The man in the image may have information that could help us with the investigation. We hope that either he will recognise himself in the CCTV and contact us, or maybe someone will recognise him and get in touch with us." As forensic science advances over the years, we have retested evidence and we routinely review material gathered as part of the investigation. The CCTV is another element of this review. We never give up hope when we have information or evidence that could lead us to get answers for Vera's family. They were left devastated by her death and have had to live with what happened since 1991. We just want to get them some form of closure following the traumatic and shocking murder of their loved one. Shortly after this appeal, Cheshire Police confirmed that two people in the CCTV had been identified and thanked the public for their help. Unfortunately, I don't have any further information to give you around whether these two people were arrested or spoken to in connection with Vera's murder. The last update that I can find comes from 2021, when following another appeal, a 70-year-old man from Widnes and a 61-year-old female from Warrington were arrested. In the report I'm reading, it says the arrest came following information from the public, but it doesn't say whether this was from the CCTV. They were subsequently released without charge. Cheshire Police are still actively investigating Vera's case and have made a promise to Lorraine and Neil that the case will never be closed until they have the answers. Their biggest struggle appears to be the motive. Yes, the cell confession from Davis gives a motive, but this isn't confirmed, and from what family and friends say of Vera, she was a salt of the earth type. She wasn't mixed up in crime, drugs, or any other type of trouble, and she lived for her kids and grandkids. She had one grandchild, Danielle, at the time of her murder, and Lorraine was pregnant with her second. Since Vera's passing, she now has 6 grandchildren, who she never got to meet, never got to cuddle, never got to spend time with. Speaking in 2016, Lorraine said, "I would like for them to come forward. It would be good if they did. As time goes on, I think there's more than one person that knows about it. Just through the injuries my mum had, it's hard to imagine it was just one person. It's hard because I've got young kids now. I've got a 3 and a 6-year-old, and even they ask about my mum. Obviously we've got pictures, and they ask things about Nana Vera. We say she's up in the sky, and they ask if they can go and see her. They don't really understand, but it's nice that they ask about her." Anyone with information on Vera's murder can contact Cheshire Police on 101 or anonymously through Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. As always, a really big thank you to you guys for listening to the Unsolved podcast. I've again seen our listener numbers going up, and I'm so grateful to you all. I would love it if you could take the time to rate the podcast on whichever platform you listen through and share it with your true crime loving friends. Which is what I'm going to do now. Share another wonderful recommendation for you all. This week it's the podcast Don't Blame the Mum. As you know, I got invited to attend the Spotify mixer and met with Kate and Hannah from Don't Tell the Mum. I must admit, I have said I will be binging between all of the amazing hosts that I got to meet whilst at Spotify, but I'd be lying if I didn't say Don't Blame the Mum is getting the biggest binge. It's amazing. I've absolutely loved it. So do go and give it a listen. As always, you can follow me on my social media pages, Instagram and TikTok. The links are below if you would like to press those. If you would like to contribute to the making of this podcast, you can do so through the Buy Me a Coffee link. Any money received through this link goes into the producing of this podcast. Once again, thank you for listening, and until next week, goodbye.